Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch my whiskey wandering videos. It's really great to have you all a part of this little but growing bourbon and whiskey lovers community. Now, this time I am here in North County of San Diego in Costco store located in Carlsbad for round number 2. And again, this store usually has probably one of the best selections of whiskeys I've seen in Costco's in Southern California, at least on a consistent basis. So this will be the second pass at this Costco Carlsbad where we can see a few more interesting and desirable whiskeys that I found. Now before we get to it though, if you like these videos of me whiskey shopping at Costco, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when my newest videos get put up. So thanks again, and let's get down to it. Okay, so in this second video from Carlsbad Visit, there are a couple of whiskeys that I saw, and actually one that I ended up buying, but truthfully, I'm not exactly sure why, but I'll get to that more in a sec. But the first whiskey that I saw, and it is definitely an eye catcher, is this Willet Pot Still small batch. Now, from the reading online, I guess it used to be single barrel, but was switched to small batch. But the label on the shelf says single barrel, and the bottle says small batch now, so just a point of clarification. This Willet Pot Still has bourbons in it that are between the 8 and 10-year-old range, which is probably sourced from other distilleries from Willet. Now, the most striking aspect, and I guess the most appealing thing about this whiskey, is going to be the bottle. I mean, it caught my eye for sure. Now, the reason I say this is not fully Willet whiskey is because I found some info online, so again, take that with a grain of salt, and it said that the distiller was originally called Willet and then changed its name to Kentucky Bourbon Distillers. And in the dark time for the whiskeys, I guess in the 1970s, when they couldn't give bourbons away, they stopped producing bourbons and started buying up bourbons from other distillers who couldn't sell it either. And as the original bourbon stock from Willet started to run low, they started to mix in those new bourbons that they had bought from the other folks who couldn't sell it. But up until 2012, when they re-fired up the distillery again, they started using Willet whiskeys again, but still backfilled it with the additional supplies that they had left over until they can get a full spectrum quantity of Willet to be able to go solo. All right. So that's why it's maybe not full Willet whiskey. So that's enough story time. This whiskey at Costco is priced at $79.99, while on the street, shelf price is as high and low of $139.99 and as low as $89.99, which makes the average price on the street at $114.99. So if you buy it at Costco, you'll be saving $35, or that comes out to around 30.44%. Not too bad of a difference. The ABV on it is at 47%, so it's not that bad. It's definitely got some kick to it, but the tasting notes is where it starts to take a real beating. There are mentions of caramel, floral, herbal notes, so the normal kind of stuff like that, but then it gets down to things like wet cardboard and faint oak. And yet another punch to the gut, though, is that the average reviews gave it a 67.5 point score, and used in the description things like nothing to write home about, or the flavor profiles leave me disappointed, no wow factor, all flash and no substance, and all hat and no cowboy, if you catch my drift. So in conclusion, I would not buy this bottle, or actually, you know what? I would buy this bottle. If you want something to stand out on your bar or in your whiskey collection, or something that your friends who may not know much about whiskey are going to be drawn to, and that way you can drink it with them and not feel guilty about wasting your good whiskey with your non-whiskey drinking friends. Now the second whiskey is, well, I'm not really sure how to say this, but it's definitely interesting for a couple of reasons. As to be fair though, I did end up buying one, so I guess you can tell what side I'm on. But I'll get to that. So the second whiskey is by Loch Lomond 17, but it is the Christie Kerr edition. So this whiskey is a collaboration between the well-established and very serious Scotch producer Loch Lomond and the LPGA ladies golf star Christie Kerr. It's even got her little signature on it. And the Scotch is in fact aged in French oak ex-Pinot Noir cask from Christie Kerr's cellar in St. Helena, California, which is her winery. There are only 4,000 of these bottles that were made and sent out to the US, to the UK, as well as to Asia. Now, this bottle, it's a strange collaboration for sure. I'm not really sure who it's for. Maybe it's for lady golfers who like Scotch, or maybe male Scotch drinkers who like lady golfers. I mean, I even found it in a raffle that if you apply for the LPGA magazine, you could win a bottle of it. So it's strange to say the least, and I'm not either of those categories, but I did end up buying it. But what's not laughing matter is the cost on it. So even at Costco, the price is at a point that puts it in a pretty competitive group for scotches. So it's aged 17 years, and the cost at Costco for the Loch Lomond Christie Kerr edition is $159.99. Even more interesting is the high and low for the bottle. On the street, price is set at a high of $479.99 or at a low of $250. So this puts the average cost at $364.99. So if you do buy it at Costco, which I did, you'll save $205 or 56.17%. So that is actually a pretty good savings. The ABV on the Loch Lomond 17 is at 48.1%, so you could say that this whiskey isn't teeing off from the ladies' tea. No? All right. Sorry, I take that one back. But in all seriousness, it is a pretty respectable ABV for any whiskey. And the taste on the bottle is described as very desserty, so with fruit notes, pudding-like flavors, biscuits, marzipan, custard, malty booze, and fruit-packed trifle. And the alcohol content is actually pretty stealthy. So maybe it is perfect for the wife. And to me, all those things sound delicious. Now the reviews though is what put me over the edge to buy it. In fact, it got very favorable reviews, on average with a score of 88.38 points, which is better than most. And also the limited release of 4,000 bottles, which I know, it doesn't mean it's necessarily good, and it doesn't really necessarily mean that it's tasty, it just means that there aren't many of them. But you know what, in conclusion, I bought it because the reviews look good, the flavor profile looked good, and hey, you know what, if Miss Kerr knows something about wine, maybe she's got something great to contribute to Scotch. We'll just have to wait and see. So, in conclusion, I bought one because honestly, I'm kind of curious how good it is, and I just hope it's actually not great, because if it is, it's going to be a nightmare to try to find more of it. Okay, so last and probably least for today is this whiskey in concept that could be very cool, but in execution is not done very well, and from the looks of it, that's kind of sort of what you would expect. The last whiskey that caught my eye is this Goalong 5-year-old Chinese whiskey. Now, I know what you're thinking right now, and you don't have to say it, and really nor do I. But that thought that you have right now is the thought that I also had at that time when we saw it. And from the research on this whiskey, it turns out that we're probably both right. So this Goalong whiskey is made in China, which started to export whiskey to the United States in 2013. And Goalong is the first large-scale single malt whiskey distiller in China. It's made from 100% Australian malted barley. And the claims by the company is that because of the unique climate of China, so basically the humidity, there isn't a need to age the whiskey for longer than 5 years because it matures much faster. Yeah, right. Now on the positive side, I will say that the packaging looks great. The price at Costco is set at a pretty high $89.99, while on the street shelf price you can find it as low as and high as $149.99 on the high side, and on the low side, $97.99 on the low side. So the average price is going to be set at $123.99 on average. And if you bought it at Costco, you would save around $34 or 27.42% off the average street shelf price. The ABV on it is only at 40%, which is quite low. In fact, I'm pretty sure in parts of Eastern Europe, at least until the 90s, this might have been considered a soft drink. And the taste profile is described as mango, and then not aged enough in the barrel, and surprisingly hot, read as alcoholness, for how low the ABV is. The reviews of the Goalong have not been kind to it, and I will just start with that. The average review I saw is at 53.2 points, which is probably the lowest one I've ever seen so far. And the reviews usually include some sort of recommendation to just pour it down the drain, keep the fancy bottle, and use it as a fancy decanter. Also, as part of the typical Chinese modus operandi, it appears that the distiller has some sort of serious issues with consistency, production quality, and even reuses the bottle from another tequila that they also produce. So sort of shoddy work, to say the least. So you know what? I think that China probably could produce a great whiskey, like a Great Wall, if the goal was to not just copy a whiskey poorly and then to try to sell it to a bourbon-thirsty American public who obviously doesn't seem to be literally and figuratively buying it. I mean, there is tons of it still on the shelf for months, basically. So in conclusion, this is going to be a hard pass. I'm not opposed to whiskeys from anywhere else outside of the traditional whiskey makers areas, but this is just too poorly done, too poorly rated, and basically almost insulting. Sorry, Goalong. All right, so that was it for today's Whiskey Wandering at Costco in Carlsbad Part 2, which is in San Diego, California. Thank you all so much again for watching until the end. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get notified when my newest videos get put up. Also remember, if you see a whiskey that you love, just buy it. Because if you don't, somebody else surely will, and it might even be me. So have a great rest of your day. I'm out, and adios.